שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. תפרו לי בגד עם כיסים, מילאו כיסי באגוזים. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. שאול אשאל 4 קושיות אשתה 4 כוסות. כי שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. וחוס גדולה אמי תביא לאליהו הנביא. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. הלוואי אסור יראה אותי כל כך הדור. שמחה רבה, אביב הגיע, פסח בא. 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 Welcome to Mizmor Monthly. I am Cantor Sidney Ezer, and accompanying me on piano is my friend and colleague Asher Farber. The month of Nisan, of course, is most famous for the holiday of Passover. Simcha Rabbah, the song with which we just opened our program, over the years has become the Passover anthem, a cheerful song that combines a festive atmosphere and joy of spring. The lyrics are by Bilha Yafeh, who was an Israeli educator, writer, and children's poet. Born in 1891 in Kovna, Lithuania, then part of the Russian Empire, she moved to Israel with her husband in 1913. She has published songs, stories, and plays for children as well as educational playbooks. The composer is Yedidia Admon. Born in Ekaterinoslav, Ukraine in 1894, he immigrated to Palestine in 1906. He was a pioneer in the field of Israeli song and served as an inspiration for the generation of composers that followed him. While we will share a few Passover Seder songs this program, most of our program will focus on other historical events that occurred in the month of Nisan. But first, another song about springtime, Passover, freedom, and joy, Aviv. Aviv was written by Yaakov Fichman, an acclaimed Hebrew poet, essayist, and literary critic. Born in Bessarabia, Moldova in 1881, he settled in Palestine in 1912. He edited various literary publications and was the author of several novels. His poems won him the Ushishkin Prize, the Bialik Prize, and other literary prizes. Daniel Szymborski, the composer, was born in Königsberg, now modern-day Kaliningrad, in Russia. In 1932, he emigrated to Israel and settled in Tel Aviv, and many of his own songs have entered the folk repertoire, including Ba'amenucha, the children's Hanukkah song Ner Li, and the one we will present right now, Aviv. בשורה טובה הבאתי, כי הגנים לאורה, וביער ובחורש, כל ציפור אומרה שירה, כי בכל פינה הפסח, את ריחו הטוב נותן, ואביב כבר בארצנו, זמן חירות וגיל וחן. La 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 בשורה טובה הבאתי, כי הגנים לאורה, וביער ובחורש, כל ציפור אומרה שירה, כי בכל פינה הפסח, את ריחו הטוב נותן, ואביב כבר בארצנו, זמן חירות וגיל וחן. לה 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 In honor of Rosh Chodesh, we are including B'tzeit Yisrael from the Hallel liturgy. You are most familiar with the version by Yedidia Admon, B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. But here is a version as sung by the Slonim Hasidim. Slonim is a Hasidic dynasty originating in the town of Slonim, which is now in western Belarus. Today there are two Slonimer factions, one based in Jerusalem and one in Bnei Barak. Almost all of the Slonimer Hasidim had perished in the Holocaust, but the present-day community was rebuilt from the Slonimer Hasidim who had settled in Israel. So this melody for B'tzeit Yisrael is sung by the Slonimer Hasidim specifically for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So we thought it would be appropriate to present it this month. Plus, B'tzeit Yisrael is part of Hallel, which we recite on Rosh Chodesh, festivals, and at the Passover Seder. So feel free to incorporate this melody at Passover this year, at the Seder, or if you ever find yourself leading Shachrit or Hallel on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, use this melody as well. Enjoy. B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho Yisrael, mamshelotav hayam rava, yanos hayarden yisov leachor, heharim rakedu chelim gevaot kivnei tzon, alecha hayam kitanus, heharim tirkedu chelim, milifnei adon chuli haaretz, milifnei Eloah Yaakov, ahov yatzor hagamayim, halamish lemaino mayim. According to the Torah in Genesis chapter 8, verses 10 to 14, the first of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, is the day the flood waters receded from the earth, after the dove was sent out by Noah and returned with an olive branch. The Shabbat Zemer Yom Shabbaton, written by the famed 12th century Spanish poet Yehuda Halevi, references this glorious event. It features the chorus, Yona Matzah Avo Manoach, the dove found rest on this day, in other words, Shabbat, and the Zemer compares remembering Shabbat to the sweet odor of the sacrifice given by Noah when he emerged from the ark. It pictures Israel as Noah's dove, who finally found a resting place after 7 days of wanderings, and God's protection stems from the promise made at the waters of Noah. To acknowledge this event, we will sing Yom Shabbaton. Like other Shabbat table songs, there are many melodies to Yom Shabbaton. This one that we will present is a popular one among North American communities. It was included in a 1927 publication by the Jewish Historical Ethnographical Society in Vilna entitled Musikalischer Pinkas. The author, Abraham Bernstein, notated the melody, and he identified the source as Harav Zeidman of Vilna. Yom Shabbaton. יום שבתון אין לשכוח, זכרו קריח הניחוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, ושם ינוחו יגיע כוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוחו יגיע כוח, איי איי איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוחו יגיע כוח. היום נכבד לבני אמונים, זהירים לשומרו, אבות ובנים. חקוק בשני לוחות אבנים, מרוב אונים ואמיץ כוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח, איי איי איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח. ובאו כולם בברית יחד, נעשה ונשמע, אמרו כאחד. ופתחו וענו אדוני אחד, ברוך הנותן ליהב כוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח, איי איי איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח. דיבר בקודשו בהר המור, יום השביעי זכור ושמור, וכל פרקודיו יחד לגמור. הזק מותניים ואמץ כוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח, איי איי איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח. העם אשר נקט צאנך, יזכור נבוכתו ברית ושבועה, לא יעבור במקרה רע, כאשר נשבעת על מי נוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח, איי 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 איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח, איי 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 איי. יונה מצא בו מנוח, איי 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 איי, ושם ינוח יגיע כוח. According to Exodus chapter 40, the first of Nisan, Rosh H, was also when the Mishkan, or the tabernacle, was inaugurated. The Mishkan was the portable sanctuary for the Israelites during the period of wandering in the desert. If you attended shul in the last few months when we read the latter half of the book of Exodus dealing with the construction of the Mishkan, you will have heard the next melody we are going to perform from Exodus chapter 25, verse 8. Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. They shall build for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell among them. This is often paired with the last line of Ashrei, V'anachnu nevarach me'ata ve'olam. We will bless God from now and forever. The melody is an excerpt, more specifically the chorus, from the song Sanctuary by American music producer, songwriter, and guitarist Randy Scruggs in collaboration with John W. Thompson. This melody has primarily become popular in among the more liberal conservative congregations in the U.S., but we have instituted it at Beth Tzedek as well. You will often hear Rabbi Friar Bodson use it for V'ne'emar at the end of the Aleinu instead of the usual V'ne'emar, V'haya Adonai, and so on. Ve'asu li mikdash. Nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam ve'asu li mikdash ve'shachanti betocham נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Na 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 Join with us. Nine, 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 The first of Nisan is also the birthday of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. Born April 4th, 1772 in Miedzybozh in what is now western Ukraine, Reb Nachman, a great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, revived the Hasidic movement by combining the esoteric secrets of Judaism with in-depth Torah scholarship. He attracted thousands of followers during his lifetime, and his influence continues today through many Hasidic movements. In 1802, he moved to the town of Bratslav in west-central Ukraine. There he declared, "Today we have planted the name of the Breslaver Hasidim. The name will never disappear because my followers will always be called after the town of Breslav." He is also known as Rabbi Nachman Meuman, Uman in central Ukraine, where he lived his last days and was buried. Given the current situation in Ukraine, we thought it would be an opportunity to share some of the rich Ukrainian Jewish heritage. We will perform one of Rabbi Nachman's famous teachings, Kol Ha'olam Kulo. The musical setting is by Orthodox rabbi, musician, and composer Baruch Chayet. Since the late 60s, Baruch Chayet has composed hundreds of Jewish religious songs that have wide popularity, including Kol Ha'olam Kulo. Kol Ha'olam Kulo, Gesher Tsar Me'od. V'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. The entire world is a very narrow bridge, but the most important thing is not to be afraid at all. Join with us. Kol ha'olam kulo Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Kol Ha'olam Kulo, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od. והעיקר לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל, לא לפחד כלל, לא לפחד כלל. One of the melodies attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov comes from the concluding section of the Passover Haggadah, Karev Yom. Karev Yom is a verse from a 5th century poem, Vayehi B'chatzi Halayla. It happened in the middle of the night, which recalls numerous examples of God's nighttime rescues. At night, God saved Israel with the 10th plague. At the middle of the night, God helped Jacob when he was pursued by Lavan, and Mordechai when pursued by Haman, etc. This poem is typically sung on the first Seder night in the Ashkenazi tradition. With the holiday of Passover on the 14th of Nisan, we thought we would share this Hasidic melody of Karev Yom in memory of Rabbi Nachman that you can bring to your Seders this year and in the future. Enjoy. Karev Yom, asher hu lo yom velo laila. Karev Yom, asher hu lo yom velo laila. Ahoyda, hoyda, 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 ki lecha hayom af lecha halayla. Ahoyda, hoyda, 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 ki lecha hayom af lecha halayla. שומרים הפקד לעירך כל היום וכל הלילה. שומרים הפקד לעירך כל היום וכל הלילה. טהיר, 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 טהיר כאור יום חשכס לילה. טהיר, 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 טהיר כאור יום חשכת לילה. קרב יום, קרב יום, אשר הוא לא יום ולא לילה. קרב יום, קרב יום, אשר הוא לא יום ולא לילה. היידה, 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 כי לך היום אף לך הלילה. היידה, 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 כי לך היום אף לך הלילה. Continuing with Hasidic musical tradition and a Ukrainian connection, we will now present a melody for Vehi She'amda. One of the notable texts at our Seder, Vehi She'amda recalls the promise made to our ancestors that still holds true for us. In every generation, our enemies seek our destruction, but the Holy One saves us from their hands. You probably know the familiar folk tune, Vehi She'amda, Lavoteinu Velanu. So, the following Hasidic melody is by Chabad Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Rabbi Schneerson, known to many as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, or simply the Rebbe, was born on the 11th of Nisan, in April 5th, 1902, in the Black Sea port of Nikolaev in the Russian Empire, which is now Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine. He was the most recent Rebbe of the Lubavitch Hasidic dynasty and is considered one of the most influential Jewish leaders of the 20th century. He introduced this melody for Vehi She'amda on the second night of Passover in 1955. So we hope you enjoy it and use it at your Seders. Vehi she'amda lavoteinu velanu shelo echad milvad amad aleinu lechaloteinu ela shebechol dor vador omdim aleinu lechaloteinu v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam elo shebechol dor vador omdim aleinu lechaloteinu שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו עומדים עלינו עומדים עלינו לכלותנו והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. Go Down Moses. This phrase is the title of one of the most well-known African spirituals of all time. The song discusses themes of freedom. The lyrics represent liberation of the ancient Jewish people from Egyptian slavery. Although usually thought of as a spiritual, the earliest written record of the song was as a rallying anthem at Fort Monroe for the contrabands, or those escaped slaves, or those affiliated with the Union forces, sometime before July 1862. This became the first ever spiritual to be recorded in sheet music that is known of by Reverend Lewis Lockwood. While visiting Fortress Monroe in 1861, he heard runaway slaves singing this song, transcribed and what he heard, and then eventually published it in this national anti-slavery standard. In the sheet music, it states that the song is from Virginia, dating from about 1853. For enslaved African Americans, the Exodus story was enormously powerful because they could relate to the experiences of Moses and the Israelites who were enslaved by the Pharaoh, representing the slaveholders, and it holds the hopeful message that God will help those who are persecuted. Go Down Moses. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed Thus saith the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. The month of Nisan also is associated with events in the life of our ancestor Joshua, Yehoshua bin Nun. According to tradition, his yurtzeit occurs on the 26th of Nisan. It was on the 7th of Nisan that Joshua sent the 2 spies to Jericho to scout out the city. The battle and conquest of Jericho, as recounted in the book of Joshua, chapter 6, took place on the 28th of Nisan, and therefore we continue our set of African American spirituals with a presentation of Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho. The song is believed to have been composed by slaves in the first half of the 19th century. Some references suggest it was copyrighted by J. Roberts in 1865. The first recorded version was by the Herod's Jubilee Singers on Paramount Records in 1922 or 1924. Like those of many other spirituals, the song's words may also be alluding to eventual escape from slavery. In the case of this song, and the walls came tumbling down. We hope you enjoy the energy and inspiration of this very lovely melody. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. You may talk about the men of Gideon, you may talk about the men of Saul, but there's none like good old Joshua at the Battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Up to the walls of Jericho he marched with his spear in hand. Come blow those ram horns, Joshua said, 'cause the battle is in our hands. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Then the ram horns they began to blow, and the trumpets began to sound. Then Joshua commanded the children to shout, and the walls came a-tumbling down. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came a-tumbling down. 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 The Jordan River was often referred to in spirituals to describe finally reaching freedom, because such an act of running away often involved crossing one or more rivers. The 10th of Nisan is known throughout Israel as Yom Aliyah, which commemorates the Israelites entering the Promised Land. It was also established to acknowledge Aliyah, the immigration of Jews to the Jewish state, and to honor the ongoing contributions of immigrants to Israeli society. According to Jewish religious tradition, upon making Aliyah by crossing the Jordan River to enter the land of Israel, Joshua composed the Aleinu prayer, thanking God. This idea was first cited in the Kolbo, a 14th a collection of Jewish ritual and civil laws of the late 14th century. Considering this connection with Aleinu, we will now present a pair of melodies. The first, Ein Od, by modern American composer, pianist, and singer-songwriter Peter Saltzman, covers the opening paragraph of Aleinu. Feel free to sing along the congregational refrain, Ein Od, which underlies the entire piece. Usher will be holding down that congregational refrain. The second melody we'll present is a congregational melody for the final line of Aleinu, V'ne'emar, by Cantor Stephen Friedman, an award-winning composer and accomplished folk singer and teacher. Everyone is familiar with the usual melody. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai. So something different. Feel free to learn this one and to change things up a little bit. Enjoy. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, לתת גאולה יוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו. אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות על לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. The 14th day of Nisan, on which Passover falls, was also the date of the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943. The uprising would last until the 3rd of Iyar and is now commemorated in Israel on the 27th of Nisan as Yom HaShoah. In memory of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, we will perform the song Varsha. The text is by Shmerke Kaczorzinski, a Yiddish-speaking poet, musician, writer, and cultural activist. Kaczorzinski dedicated much of his time after the start of the Second World War to collecting pre-war Yiddish songs and songs of the Holocaust to save Yiddishkeit from destruction. The author, editor, or publisher of most of the first post-Holocaust songbooks, Kaczorzinski was responsible for preserving over 250 Holocaust songs. The majority of those are still known. The music is by Leon Weiner. Leon Weiner was born in Lodz in 1898 into a family of cantors. Until 1948, he began composing to honor and remember the heroes and those who were killed. He collaborated with Shmerke Kaczorzinski to produce a collection of 96 songs of the ghetto and of the partisans, 23 of which were Weiner's own compositions. The snow falls and the earth does not become white. It still holds the blood in a boil. It calls for revenge on snowy ice, the blood of the heroic Jew. We will remember the pain and the courage. Their spirit glows as if in a fever. Engrave in your hearts 3 words in blood: revenge, revenge, revenge. This is Varsha. Verschwindt nit die Nacht und der Tag kommt nit an. A blutige Keul wird die Erd scheun. A jed flattert auf wie a stürmische Fahn. A Fahn in dem Tal von die Meisim. A jed flattert auf wie a stürmische Fahn, a Fahn in em Tal von die Meisim. In Churves das Ghetto, die Jiden in Schlacht, der Jid spreist durch Räuch und durch Flammen. Nikome, es stürmt die Nacht, vor Kinder, vor Tates, vor Mames. Nikome, stürmt die Nacht, vor Kinder, vor Tates, vor Mames. Der Schnee schied und der Erd wird nicht weiß. Es halt noch das Blut in ein Siedel. Es ruft noch Nikome auf schneeigen Eis, das Blut von das heldische Jiedel. Es ruft noch Nikome auf schneeigen Eis, das Blut von das heldische schulft der Jid und kein Nacht. Wir werden die Welt nicht vergeben, die welche seinen gefallen in Schlacht, ewig in uns werden leben, die welche seinen gefallen in Schlacht, ewig in uns werden leben. Wir werden gedenken dem Weh und dem Mut, es fiebert in Glied die Neshome, kriegt's euch sich in Herzen 3 Wärter von Blut, Nikome, 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 kriegt's euch sich in Herzen 3 Wärter von Blut, Nikome, Nikome, Nikome. We end our section on the Holocaust on a more hopeful note with Spalt der Himmel. Its author and composer are unknown, but it was sung in many concentration camps. In this song, the impending end of winter and coming of springtime serves as a metaphor for the end of the bitter suffering. Everything is blooming and full of promise. Split open, heaven. Let the sun's rays shine on us with your springtime light. Let winter and the cold drop away. Let your face light up in joy. Spalt der Himmel. Spart sich Himmel, los die Sonnenstrahlen, uns bescheinen mit dein Frühlingslicht. Soll der Winter mit der Kälte abfallen, soll in Frieden leichten das Gesicht, grünen Rosen blühen scheun die Blumen, und die Welt ist voll mit Leibgesang, weil der Frühling ist zu uns gekommen, alles blüht und ist voll mit Verlang. Spart sich Himmel, los die Sonnenstrahlen, uns bescheinen mit dein Frühlingslicht, so der Winter mit der Kälte abfallen, soll in Frieden leichten das Gesicht, kommen Vögeln von der Weit geflogen, mit a Gruß, der Frühling ist schon da, Geruch schon von der Kälte Geliebten, es kommt war unser guter Schau. Spart sich Himmel, los die Sonnenstrahlen, uns bescheinen mit dein Frühlingslicht, soll der Winter mit der Kälte abfallen, sollen Frieden leichten dein Gesicht. Spart sich Himmel, los die Sonnenstrahlen, uns bescheinen mit dein Frühlingslicht, so der Winter mit der Kälte abfallen, soll in Frieden leichten sein Gesicht, soll in Frieden leichten dein Thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Mizmor Monthly, exploring through song events in the month of Nisan. We will conclude with a medley of 3 settings for Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, which we recite at the end of the Passover Seder. The first is a common folk melody. The second one is attributed to Cantor Yehoshua Weiser, but if you listen carefully, it is practically the A section of Utsu Eitza, a Purim song that we presented last month for Adar. The third setting is by 20th century cantor and composer Moshe Nathanson, who some scholars claim was in fact responsible for the lyrics to Hava Nagila that have become so popular today. To connect the biblical historical truth of Joshua crossing the Jordan to our modern practical reality, especially when Jews worldwide will be celebrating Passover and remembering the Exodus, we should take to heart that the destination of leaving Egypt was entering the land of Israel. In this turbulent period of refugee crisis and upheaval, the often repeated phrase, L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim, should not be said in vain. We wish you a happy and healthy Passover, Chag Kasher v'Sameach, L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim hamnuya, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim hamnuya. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba, L'shana haba, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba, L'shana haba, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba, L'shana haba, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba, L'shana haba, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba'a, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Chag Kasher v'Sameach and Chodesh Tov. Happy Nisan.